In The Information Age, Economy, Society, and Culture, Volume 3, End of the Millennium by Manuel Castells, page 372, you will find under the header Genesis of a New World the following passage. Quote, "The information technology revolution induced the emergence of informationalism, the generation of wealth, the exercise of power, and the creation of cultural codes came to depend on the technological capacity of societies and individuals." End quote. Science Magazine published an article entitled "The World's Technological Capacity to Store, Communicate, and Compute Information" by Martin Hilbert et al. In it, you will find expressed in the graph labeled Figure 4 the following information. The percentage of all information flowing through two-way telecommunications networks throughout the entire world via the internet jumped from just 1% in 1993 to 51% in 2000 to 97% in 2007. As implied by Castells' words and reflected in Hilbert et al.'s data, the impact of the information revolution is hard to overstate. It's been nothing short of transformative, arguably more so than any revolution since the late 18th century. Yet for all its sweeping changes, the information age of today is less than 20 years old. According to the Pew Research Center, by June of 2000, just 3% of adult internet users connected at home via high-speed broadband. By 2013, meanwhile, the number had risen to 70%. But there's another reason to stipulate the year 2000 as the modern era's year zero. In that same year, Sony unveiled their historic gaming console, the PlayStation 2.
Sony PlayStation 2 will be the biggest thing to come along since TV was invented. The buzz on this product is that strong.
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2. Newest, fastest video game system ever.
In terms of social impact, video game consoles are rarely mentioned in the same breath as the personal computer. But with the PS2, the two more or less converged. This sleek and affordable digital machine could play DVDs, old PlayStation games, and soon enough, it could even go online. Thanks to the PS2's custom graphics synthesizer GPU, the console could render in real time up to 16 million polygons every second, simultaneously alongside lighting effects, AI, texture mapping, and game physics. This technological leap forward ensured that, for the most part, video games no longer resembled novelties or toys. They became unmistakably impressive achievements of art, technology, and design, even to the layman. On the PS2, games became more like miniature interactive worlds than ever before. This marked the tipping point. Gaming finally crossed over to so-called mainstream society, and Hollywood began to lose traction as the entertainment medium du jour as a result. Within a decade, games would become synonymous with the times. Just like vinyl records and films before them, video games became one of the primary cultural modes of the so-called developed world. Popular in both the East and the West, transcending the limits of any one culture, gaming consoles like the PS2 helped redefine global geopolitical and cultural boundaries along technological lines. But it's hard to imagine the PS2 specifically would have played such a pivotal role in popularizing the medium if not for the console's secret weapon, exclusives. From day one, the PS2 became known for its exclusive killer apps. These games established a pedigree for the console, providing it over time with a deep back catalog of classics to rival that of any console in the industry's history. Consider, within its first year of existence, the PS2 saw a staggering number of highly anticipated and artistically groundbreaking debuts. Final Fantasy X, Grand Theft Auto 3, Ico, Silent Hill 2, Devil May Cry, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 all came out in 2001 alone. But of all the high-profile exclusives released that year, perhaps none were as shrouded in secrecy as Hideo Kojima's Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Just as the original Metal Gear Solid was synonymous with the original Sony console, so too was MGS2 slated to be one of the PS2's flagship releases. But even before release, MGS2 was already making waves. The E3 trailer, with its unprecedented length, eye-popping graphics, and cinematic grandeur, was a miniature revolution in of itself. Story details were scarce, of course, but just by looking at the trailer you could tell MGS2 was to feature incredible visuals, intense action, and gripping gameplay. Fans and curious newcomers alike around the world couldn't wait to pick up the mantle of Solid Snake and commence PS2-powered operations of tactical espionage action. What followed is one of the greatest cases of bait-and-switch meta-narrative advertising ruses in the industry's history. Upon release, Metal Gear Solid went from one of the gaming industry's most hotly anticipated releases to one of its most controversial and divisive. This single game helped permanently blur the pop culture line between art and entertainment in this medium, between ruse and reality. It's fair to say none of us had a clue what we were really in store for. Metal Gear Solid 2 begins with Snake's voiceover. Subtly, this establishes the opening will not transpire as it really took place, but rather as a memory or a flashback of events taking place 2 years ago. We never learn concretely who Snake's words are addressed to here. Regardless, this distance and ambiguity foreshadow MGS2 will shift perspectives from the original game. Unlike MGS1, Snake isn't you exactly, because at the very least in this voiceover opening, it's you he's talking to.
The Hudson River, 2 years ago. We had classified intelligence that a new type of Metal Gear was scheduled for transport. The whole thing stank, but our noses had been out in the cold too long.
We fade in on a stormy Manhattan night sky. Thunder rumbles ominously over the George Washington Bridge, or as it's sometimes called by locals, the GW. The opening scene looks fantastic enough to be pre-rendered, but it's not. The entire sequence is actually rendered by the game's engine in real time. Using real-time rendering, even for cutscene exclusive content such as this, establishes an aesthetic consistency, enabling full immersion in the unbroken illusion of this digital world. This detailed in-game render of the George Washington Bridge also foreshadows the significance both Manhattan and the American Revolution will play for the story and its themes. The look of the opening sequence also establishes MGS2's studious attention to objects and environments, a decision that few games really attempted before it and many imitated after. The degree of painstaking detail given to the opening remains impressive to this day. Note how the fog, mist, rain, and wind give the scene a dynamic, noir-like moodiness and cohesion. These atmospheric details give the impression of a complete world replete with physical and meteorological properties. Crucially, these visual details evoke a sense of actually being there in person. Note how the traffic lights form halos and smudge against the rainy backdrop pointillistically. This suggests seeing not through the lens of a movie camera, but through human eyes. Feel and presence will be key words moving forward. 30 seconds in and it's already clear MGS2 is unlike any game to come before it. Even the score feels unmistakably cutting edge for the era. The PS1 hardware was incapable of such crisp, clear, responsive, and full sound and audio design. Whereas Snake's trapeze-like infiltration sequence shows off the PS2's capabilities for fluid, realistic character movements and animation, the image of Snake kneeling as his malfunctioning stealth camo spurts out electricity endures as an iconic moment for the era. It's all very impressive to be sure, but don't become so in awe that you miss the return of our old pal from MGS1, Revolver Ocelot. What the hell is he doing here?
He'll know soon enough.
Whatever the reason, it's probably bad news. You might say his presence not only foreshadows narrative events to come, but more importantly, it foreshadows the extensive role foreshadowing itself will come to play as a storytelling technique in MGS2. But why has Snake just leapt on board a giant tanker? Well, it's pretty simple.
Here, this is what you came for, right?
What's that?
An optical disc. It's all here. The main hard drive was destroyed by gunfire. This is the only remaining copy of the data.
What
kind of data?
All the data collected from this exercise? Don't play dumb. I know you were sent to get this. I hid it from that sadistic maniac while he was torturing me. They don't know this disc exists.
You'll remember that Ocelot escaped from Shadow Moses Island with Metal Gear Rex's technical specs and test data in hand. Since then, Ocelot has sold this information on the black market, and almost overnight, Metal Gear derivatives have begun to spread like wildfire. Who knew information could be powerful enough to change the world? To curb the proliferation of Metal Gears and their nuclear weapons Ocelot indirectly caused, Otacon and Snake have formed a non-governmental organization, or NGO, called Philanthropy. Yes, it seems your days working as a pawn for the military-industrial complex are over. Snake has been given back his liberty. What's lured you on board this tanker is the insidious, potentially world-shaking implications of the cargo concealed beneath its big shell. According to intel Otacon hacked out of the Pentagon, this tanker is nothing more than a front for housing and concealing the Marine Corps' top-secret experimental anti-Metal Gear Metal Gear. The Marines designed this prototype, codenamed Metal Gear Ray, to serve as a deterrent against all variations of Metal Gears now loose in the world, but the specific capabilities of their new toy remain unclear. That's where you come in. Your mission is to ascertain where the ship is headed, and then to obtain photographic evidence of this Metal Gear Ray and blow the story wide open. Think of Philanthropy as an organization like Greenpeace, and the tanker as like a whaling vessel. You're not out to hurt anyone per se, but rather to hijack information meant to remain suppressed and expose the perpetrators to the moral condemnation of the world. Before you can even begin this virtuous mission, however, its parameters begin to abruptly change. It seems Snake is not the only stealthy stowaway on board the Discovery tonight, because out of nowhere a mysterious unit of special forces with Russian gear rise from the shadows and descend from the outer reaches of heaven to kill all the Marine sentries above deck.